Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the council meeting for the 19th of April. Please join me in standing for the opening karakia.
Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina ki huta, kia mā tara ki tai, e he ake ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, tihei, mauri ora.
Thank you very much. As far as I know, I haven't received any apologies. Okay.
Just for Jake for lateness.
Okay, thank you very much, Tyrone. Number 2, declarations of interest. We don't have it.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, I thought you did. Yep. And Sam seconded it. That's great. All those in favour? Against? Thank you. Carried. Declarations of interest. We actually have no declarations, so we'll move on to accepting our supplementary reports. For number 11, the supplementary reports. Can I have a mover and second to include these supplementary reports? 1, item 12, my monthly report, and PX item 14. Sam and Kelly. Thank you.
All those in favour?
All those in favour? Against? Thanks, carried. Number 3, public participation. Drusilla, welcome. Would you like to come up and talk to us, please? Yeah. She's here to speak about a few different topics and some of the things she's been working on. Welcome.
This is it. Is that going?
Yep.
Kia ora. I'm just so happy to see a lot of the same faces that I know, okay? Which is really, really good. I'm going to try and keep it simple. Okay, I'll just get organised here for 1 minute. I do have paperwork to give out. There's some paperwork for the Mayor.
Thank you.
And just some extra paperwork. And that's all. I run out of time, and as usual, and I think some of it you might have already had. So the first thing is I'm going to talk about is rail. All right. TOA 2000. I've set up company 219, and the kaupapa is to promote a low emission rail system for Aotearoa New Zealand, while also promoting historic rail and transport services to support better water infrastructure services projects. So following the Free Waters, the target for this is 225. There's also 2 or 3 groups out there. One is in a company in England who want to bring fast rail. I've actually bought, there's an article in the AA just recently. I'm still trying to follow that one up. There's a meeting tonight at the library by another crowd, but there's also an element that are really like protesters, and I don't want to really be involved with that. I have to raise 200 million. 100 million to set it up. It's actually a mapping system, and it will show the history of rail right through New Zealand and bring in big players. And it involves setting up the company, which is a mapping system, and then it involves setting up an incorporated society, which will be all your tradies. I'm looking at when they do Lake Onslow. My dad did the Stillwater mine disaster. I'm a coal miner's daughter. I come from the West Coast. My dad did Manapori. We lived in the hydro village. I won't speak any more on that because that's going to be an ongoing thing, and it really depends on the big players. And if this company does come and bring it to New Zealand, we want to be ready, because otherwise it's going to affect your tradies and the water projects. And it's quite complicated. So I'm just doing one thing at a time. This is just to make you aware. The second thing is I want to talk about the Te Kaha Foundation, Friends of the Multi-Arena. A lot of you may not know that I did the Commonwealth Games when I was a kid, and it united the whole city. And that's what I think we need to do. Once you get your stadium up and built, you need to have a business model that's going to unite everybody, and maybe the foundation, and you can incorporate the convention centre and the town hall, and it will help unite the people. At the moment, I can't sell my house and donate you any money towards that project because you don't have a legal entity. So that needs to happen. The second one is the bus exchange. I get hoo-ha about that because just right now, I've been up since 4 this morning. I drove in, I caught a bus, I've been to work, I've come down here, I've been sitting here doing paperwork. I had a desk. I do the same. I catch 22 buses a day. I looked at moving back into town. I live in Rangiora. I can't afford to, and now I've ended up with my son at home. So there's all that thing. So a lot of us workers, I have to be on site by 6:30, so I can actually drive all the way from Rangiora, catch the Waimakariri bus, Y number 17, bus into the hospital, to be at work by 6:30, but if I use the Rangiora bus, I don't get to work till 7. And I've got to beat all the guys. And there's a lot of people that are doing that. There's a lot of nurses. The bus stop, we need a bus stop over 13 Hereford Street, but I've heard that with the changes it might be going to be a bus Cashel Street. And that's a real, because we're going, from next week, I will be actually working on the towers. I've been working on the loading dock since October, and we're going to end up with another 500 workers. If you need to be in touch with my boss, I can give you the email and all that. So we need another bus, we need a bus stop, number 17, and also the bus exchange. They have that area where you want to sit. Shut. I know they had issues, and I was there when somebody got punched over, but the thing is, it's our bus exchange. There's nowhere to sit and have a meal or sit and take your lunch. But yesterday I saw 2 people standing, eating. The kids, they're all over the floor, so you've got to climb around them after 4 o'clock. So we need that area open for the public. And now the next thing is Santa's Lost Key. I've written a play. I've been working on that 8 years. I've got 100 grand tied up in it. I'm going in the Arts Centre 226. Film commission come down. It was a bit of a debacle. And no funding, so I've had to fund it myself. Because I live in Rangiora, I'm eligible for creative community funding until I have somebody in my group who actually lives in Christchurch. Mm-hmm. And probably by the time that happens, we'll have it up and going.
Yeah, Drusilla, I've let you go over time, but are you nearly finished?
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, good, carry on.
With regards to Santa's Lost Key, Santa loses key and these toys go all over Christchurch, right? 2 tanawhas, giraffe and all that. The mothership, long term, 2/24/25, I would like to see a fairy elf alien festival in the arts down High Street. You could develop that whole area for the community and do a fairy elf alien festival, because if you actually walk on High Street and look at the ANZ Bank, which I put up, right, it looks like the mothership. You've got to think. So this isn't actually Christchurch. This is the land of King Forget-Me-Not, and this is my film is based on a little town called Crystalline, which is all the only modern building is the Christchurch art gallery, and most of the buildings are after 207, like the provincial chambers, all those things.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming in. Righty-o.
Yeah. I've got to go to work.
Good on you. See ya. Right, deputations and presentations. We have no petitions, so we'll move on to the Zone Committee minutes. Item number 5. Has anyone got any questions or would like to move it? Pauline's, right, I'm prepared to put all 3 of them together if you like. Is everyone happy with that? Okay. So Pauline wants to move all 3 and Mark will second all 3. Yanni's got a question. Fire away, mate.
Question. Is it possible to get a just note on
page 11, item 13, the early input into council's annual plans. Is it possible just to get a sense of what was put into our draft annual plan from the early input?
Yeah, we'll make a note in minutes, yes.
Okay, cool. I think that
Thank
would
you.
be good. Helpful just to understand. Yep.
Okay, any other questions? No, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Right, so we'll now move on to item 8, and we have the same.
Did you want to hear from the zone committees, or?
If you're happy. Well, I think it's
okay,
they're here for the next thing anyway.
Okay,
So
cool.
minutes is
Sweet.
minutes.
Thanks.
Yeah, so now we're on to item 8, which you're all here for. So I'd like to welcome the chairperson, Gina, of the Banks Peninsula Zone Committee, Annabelle from West Melton, and Les from Selwyn, and Jamie, who I know. Oh, yeah, oh, there you go. There you go. I knew there was one missing. From ECAN, who are here to present the Triennial Zone Committee update. Welcome, and far away.
Morena, ko
Morning.
Annabelle Husmanaho and Les, you know, and Jamie, who is from the Banks Peninsula.
I'm actually the facilitator for the Selwyn Waihora Zone Committee meeting. Unfortunately,
Gina.
Gina couldn't make it this morning. She's come down sick, so.
Okay.
Okay. So I'll start off as from the Christchurch West Melton Zone Committee. So firstly, I'd just like to welcome all the newly elected members on the Zone Committee. Councillor Mark Peters, Greg Burns from ECAN, and Phil Deans from the Selwyn District Council. And so it's great to have everyone on board, and we're looking forward to working together. And just to say that I have been re-elected as chair for 2023, and Mike Patchett is my deputy chair as well for the committee. Since we last presented, there's been a lot happening in the Christchurch West Melton Zone Committee, and it's at the start of the year, it was really about team building, and we unfortunately I had COVID, so I couldn't go on the trip, but the committee went on the Otakara Avon on the Kōtānei Waka, and this was really a trip to build team building, to orientate people to being on the water and to hear the stories of Ngāi Tahu and the early settlers. We've also had a great number of presentations to the committee, and this is really related around our budget and our funding on that. Rachel Barker from the Opawa Heathcote River Network presented on the Ngāpunawai Springs project, and the focus, this is really a focus on urban rivers and what the urban springs and what the pressures are on those, and this initial stage 1 funding enabled funding from the Waitaha Impact to Action Fund for stage 2, so that just shows the great impact that the Zone Committee can have on initiating things and getting things going. We also have had 2 amazing presentations from Jenny Bond, who's the facilitator of the Tatuno Tāne project, Urban Eels, and this is an amazing action learning project, and it works with schools in Otautahi to make, teaching them to be kaitiaki and to do actions to actually improve the habitat for the eels. Hayley Guglieletti presented to the Zone Committee on the progress of the Avon Otakaro River Clean, and she has been, they have been cleaning up rubbish from the river and sorting that with the schools. She also did a presentation for the Avon Otakaro Orchard Community Garden and Food Forest, and this is an amazing project where they're actually developing a blue-green roof on the building and looking at installing a rain garden around the front edge by the river of that building. And this is really, they are really an exemplar group, and with a huge focus on environmental awareness, and all credit to what they're doing because it's largely voluntary. The Healthy Waterways Action Plan, so this is going to come before Council, I understand, in the next short wee while, and Belinda Margetts has presented to the committee on this, and we had another session on this in November, really honing down on what this was, and the committees really strongly support this Healthy Waterways Action Plan, and it will identify where we're at, where we need to be, and what we need to do to get healthy waterways in Otautahi. The committee also advocates for a collaborative partnership to ensure the community and there is political support for this. And the actions in this plan will need to be funded by Council and have the support of the community to implement this. And we look forward to seeing this plan coming before us and the implementation of it. Around community engagement, we have the Stormwater Superheroes Award in November. We awarded that awarded the champion Stormwater Superhero, and the champion Stormwater Superhero was Tunnel Wash on Selwyn Street in Addington, and the runner-up was Ready Mix Concrete. And these awards really recognise business and industry around the excellence in stormwater management. The committee has agreed to hold these awards again this year, and a Stormwater Superhero campaign, will continue again this year and will align with the Community Waterways Partnership's focus on litter and sediment. Erosion and sediment control. Well, for everyone, this is a key ongoing area of focus for the Zone Committee and for the councils. In November, Christy Williams from the Opawa Heathcote River Network gave an amazing presentation about erosion and sediment control in the Opawa Heathcote River and the Cashmere Stream and the tributaries. And as you're all aware, 85% of the hill tributaries in those catchments have poor water quality. And due to the highly erodible lower soils on the Port Hills, sediment is a key contaminant of that catchment. At the beginning of April, Deputy Chair Mike Patchett presented to the Council around the committee's recommendations for an independent audit of the effectiveness of the regulatory arrangements and capacity building of erosion and sediment control. I'd just like to say a huge thank you to staff that presented a report around this, and also to the Council for your commitment in seeking improvement around this and your discussion around the table on that day. We look forward to seeing the staff recommendations as a follow-up from this, and seek ongoing commitment from the Council to get improvement in our waterways from this major contaminant. The Zone Committee will also be presenting to the Zone Committee Land and Water Committee around this recommendation. Sorry, to the ECANS Land and Water Committee around this recommendation. At the end of April, as many of you have been invited, we will be holding a joint erosion and sediment control workshop with the Christchurch West Mountain Zone Committee, the Banks Peninsula Zone Committee and the Whakaora Healthy Harbour. And this is really to develop a collective solutions around this topic and look at the opportunities. There is a commitment from the Zone Committee to continue the Cashmere Stream and Port Hills Working Group, and after the joint workshop we will look at the terms of reference and membership of that to really strengthen that and to as a mechanism for implementing change and working with all the partners. The Community Waterways Partnership is still an ongoing activity that we are involved in and that we support, and we have been having workshops to learn about the impact framework, and also to trying to identify some key focus to bring the collective group together. And it's been agreed, as I mentioned before, that litter and sediment will be the key focus around that, and we'll try. At the end of May, there'll be a workshop, a hui, that will look at how the collective partners can come together to really reinforce that. The annual plans, as Yanni mentioned, we contributed to the annual plans and really on our focus to improve our waterways, and the key issues there were supporting the Healthy Waterways Action Plan, involvement in the Community Waterways Partnership, erosion and sediment control was a key one. And I've also got here, continue advocacy to central government with around finding solutions for the management of zinc and copper, fecal source tracking in our waterways to understand the impact of waterfowl and the management of waterfowl in our waterways, and supporting educational programs in schools around stormwater. So as a committee, we have a continued focus and a passion on improving the health of our urban waterways and working together with community and agencies responsible for water management. We look forward to working with the Council for the remainder of the year. Thank you.
Thank you, Pauline. Oh, you done? You've finished?
Yeah,
thank you, Pauline.
Thanks, Annabelle. That's a really great report, and sounds like the committee's going really well. Just regarding the stormwater superheroes, so I know that you're targeting the commercial operators. Do they enter, or do you go around and choose who might be improving?
Yeah, well, that's probably one of the barriers is to getting the entries and who to approach of how we do it. So they enter, but it's trying to get that out. We're doing a program trying to get that out, and awareness that this competition is happening, and seeking them to.
So about how many did you have entering? Do you know last time?
I don't really want to discuss that, but yes, not a huge number, but yeah.
So the idea is, well, I mean, it's just starting out, so no one's criticising that, but I think it's great that we need to spread the word to get people to enter, and that leads to them building better practice.
And I think that's a job as a zone committee. That's something that we need to actually make happen, because that's the limiting factor of it.
That's where we can probably help as well somehow as well by bringing it up too.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
So when are they going to be this year? Do you know?
I think we're looking at the end of the year. I'm not sure the exact date, but September again.
Yeah. So they just have to indicate that they've put in.
We've actually got a process of a form that they fill out and enter, and then as a committee a selection panel select the finalists of that, and then as a number of that panel go around and visit each site, and which was it was amazing last year, and then we present an award. So we're looking at sort of improving that whole process and making a bigger award ceremony.
Yeah, would it be a good idea for perhaps you to send through an entry form that we could have a look at and maybe have in our back pocket?
Yes, that's a great idea. Thank you. That would be really supportive.
Yeah.
Thank you, Pauline. Tim?
Just following on from Pauline, I guess something for the future is these companies talking to other companies about what they're doing to try and lift the game from everybody. Is that something that you guys are going to be looking at doing?
Well, I suppose one thing that we do is on the ECAN website that definitely tell the story of those areas. But yes, so these companies are really exemplars for, as you say, for other companies. So that's another area of how we encourage, get that message out further and promote that further.
Because I know in other industries, with health and safety many years ago, when that was kind of came to the fore over at sadly a number of deaths, you got different people together for morning teas and things, and just tried to spread the word, and it seemed to work really well. So, but I think it's a fantastic initiative. Thank you very much.
Any support from the council would be welcome. So if anyone's interested in that contact. Yeah,
cool. Thank you.
Tara?
Kia ora. Thanks for that report. I was looking through the various water quality of the different water bodies around, and I was looking at Te Waihora, and I know it's not in the Christchurch West Melton zone, but it's in the other two, and its water quality was like the lowest possible, extremely poor. Are there sort of some specific risks that in the very short term to the ongoing water quality of, say, Te Waihora that you've identified that we need to be mindful of?
Well, I can't speak for Te Waihora, but Liz possibly could speak to that. But I could speak in terms of, in the Christchurch West Mountain Zone, in terms of the risks. One of the key risks is sediment and urban contaminants which comes from stormwater. So those are our two key risks.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's and our whole behaviour change, and so that whole, like we've talked about, helping to get some collective action around managing sediment from development and from the Port Hills, and then just from stormwater in our residential properties and the industrial properties. The stormwater goes straight into our rivers, and all the contaminants from our brake pads, from cars, from industry, from spills, from residential properties flows into our rivers. So it's really getting an awareness of that and a behaviour change around that.
Okay, thank you. Cheers.
What's it?
Mark, please.
Thank you. Thank you for that report. That was very comprehensive. Just a quick query around the Stormwater Superheroes. Did you manage to get any publicity of that being awarded to those two companies? Thinking like the press or Star Media or someone want to pick it up?
No, that's a good point. And that's obviously something that we should follow up, not from the press or from the Star, but just through the ECAN channels, which is probably not, the biggest audience necessarily. Yep.
So maybe it was something for Stephen to catch up with offline. And then another thought was, do the zone committees have any sort of leadership role at times of pollution crisis like we had recently in the Heathcote with the dead fish? I sort of saw a fairly interesting void in there, and I wondered whether the zone committees might be a really good vehicle to, seeing how you've got ECAN and council representatives there, where it could be a good vehicle to help fill that gap and make it happen.
Yes.
Just to add, because I've got a very similar question, just to add to that too, I'd just be interested in what the zone committee's discussion was, if any, around the toxic chemical spill, and if there was anything that you observed that we should be aware of that might improve responses or that sort of behaviour.
I'd say there has, because we haven't had a meeting, since it's happened, there has been no discussion around that. But we're also very aware that those issues are managed by ECAN, and there is a whole process that is, in train with that. So yes, there's a shock horror of it actually happening, and it goes back to that message of stormwater, everything, stormwater going into our waterways. But maybe that is a void. We should talk about that and see what we should be doing. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay, Aaron?
Yeah, so a couple of questions, one around, and it's a bit of a follow-on. Pauline took most of the good questions at the start, which was good. They were great. Just with how important stormwater is to Christchurch and Canterbury and its management going forward, it kind of, to lift it up a little, would you consider rolling it into something else like the Champion Canterbury Awards, which returned this year? If the environmental award was there, and we already sponsor one looking at the list here, but ECAN doesn't. So if ECAN were the sponsor of the Stormwater Superhero and it was awarded there, literally every major business and small business in Canterbury and Christchurch would know about it, and it would take on that prestige. Is that a conversation you'd be interested in having?
We haven't had that conversation, but we have had the conversation around, yes, how do we get people wanting to involved, and the whole focus around it as, zone committee, and that's actually a really good idea to slot into that. I think. Thank you.
Because if we could suggest that to them, and then if that helps, then that'd lift it up
to actually
dramatically.
Incorporate it, to work in partnership rather than us doing it in isolation, to actually pull it into the bigger.
Yeah, and for those exemplar companies that have gone out of their way to facilitate that, they should be recognised at something as big as the Champion Canterbury Awards, because it is that important.
Yeah, no, thank you. We weren't aware of that, so I think that's really useful. Thank you.
Okay, and it'd be great if ECAN became that sponsor too, and we could always do a second bit. And then the other one was around the sediment. Has that got worse over recent years? It'll be good to see a graph, because Christchurch has been developing for 150 years. Has it always been bad every time you scrape a paddock and build something, or has it got worse? Because the mitigations have meant to have increased in this century, but has it made a difference or not would be interesting to know.
Well, I suppose sediment is a natural process, but it's been accelerated in the Christchurch with the Port Hills and the lower soil on the Port Hills, which is just so hard to manage, and then with the clearing of the Port Hills of native bush, and that has increased the erosion, and then development and houses on highly erodible soils and land, and then just the whole compliance and control of that. So the answer, look, I haven't got exactly, but it will have increased from pre-European times.
Oh, well, absolutely. But over that 150 years, has there been spikes, or is it for some reason getting worse?
I haven't seen, but yes, I think it is definitely getting worse, and an issue to manage. It's a key contaminant. So.
Yeah. Bush is the best remedy. Okay.
And managing, finding out. One of the key issues around sediment is actually finding out where the hotspots are, where the key sources are, and then actually dealing with that. And that's what focus needs to be. And this whole concept of ki uta ki tai and bringing in climate change, biodiversity. So rather just managing sediment, we're actually looking at the whole system, and we're looking at biodiversity, sediment, climate change. It's all a part of the whole system, and because sediment is sort of an effect of poor management.
Right. Cool. Thank you.
Yanni, did you have some more after Mark that you didn't?
Yeah, there was just just a brief comment. I'd encourage the zone committee to look at what collective response could be when we do have toxic chemical spills, around communication to community, working across agency, things like adequate signage, and also what the effects are on the river. Because to date, no one's no one's even answered what the likely effects have been. We've had no information about the impact on things like the ecology. But just, I think I read, sorry, there's a lot of different minutes in here, and excuse me if this might be the wrong section to raise it, but I read somewhere that we were looking at, that there was a look at doing, similar to Littleton Whakarapo catchment plan, the same thing for the other side of the Port Hills coming down. And I just thought that was it's something that I've been pushing along the Opawaho Heathcote for a long time. So I just wondered if anyone was sort of aware of that or could elaborate on that, and if you need, like, if you've considered what sort of resourcing you might be required to do that, and if there's a way we can help or support it.
So I know that discussion was had in the talk around erosion sediment control in your meeting at the council with the Port Hills management plan, and I know that Spade and Waihora Kashmir Community Board has put that in their plan, and yes, it's definitely and the catchment approach is the way that we should be managing the Port Hills and bringing everyone together. It's not the role of the zone committee to be doing that. But it's,
so as Annabelle said,
that
it's a priority for the community board, for our community board, which now goes from Sumner or the estuary right through, which is actually a really positive thing. So it's one community board dealing with that issue, which is a huge issue, and it's well and truly needs to be managed.
Yeah,
Okay, so you all done, yeah? Okay, I've just got a couple. I was talking to a guy the other day who walks up down the Horsell River a lot, and he commented how much cleaner it seems to be to him of late. Is that just because perhaps none of those, just correct me if I'm wrong, none of those sediment or retention ponds in Sparks Road area go to the Horsell River, they all go down the Heathcote River, is that right?
Yes,
so that's what we talked about, and I said, no, I think it's just generally maybe it hasn't been raining a hell of a lot and there's not as much sediment coming off the hills. So that's it, but he did comment that it seems to be a lot cleaner, and of course the cleaner the water that goes into Lake Ellesmere, the better. It's like thinners in your paint, so to speak. And the other thing is, don't forget that council was spending tens of hundreds of millions of dollars on retention basins and or sediment control, like at the Adventure Park, which is a sort of a hot spot, I suppose. So we're doing that. We're doing some down at Waitaki Basins as well as Sparks Road, Steedmans and all that sort of thing. So we are doing a lot to try and capture as much sediment off the hill as we can.
No, thank you. I recognise that, but also you need to recognise that that is the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff catching the sediment, and we actually need to be managing the sediment on the hills and managing the hills so that it's not... Yeah,
but also, say, take like the ones at Waitaki Street, that is hooking onto existing big stormwater pipes which come into the river, so we're attacking all that, say, brake pad stuff and things like that, so we are throwing a fair bit of effort at it, but it's I think it's starting to show results, so it's good.
It's a huge issue, and it's an ongoing issue that we need to be managing.
Okay, thank you. So no more questions. I will ask for a... Did I say sorry?
Oh, could I just note, I can't really speak in any great detail on the Banks Peninsula water zone update, but if you're happy to take it as read, and if anyone has any questions, I can take them away for Gina, the chair, and Shelley Washington, the facilitator, to follow up with the council, for the council.
Can do, yeah. Anyone got any questions or can forward them on? Okay, nothing? All happy? Young?
The only thing that sort of troubles me with the whole process is around the Canterbury Water Management Strategy reporting against the targets, and I just wondered, is there any document, this has sort of previously been raised, is there anything, because we hear about all the good work that the zone committees are doing, and I appreciate that, but we actually have the regional strategy with targets set, but it's very hard to kind of get from the report how we're progressing, and is there anything that we can get circulated around us that could show us how we're progressing against the targets? And I know, for example, one of the things that was supposed to be done was a review of consents to see around what the impact is in terms of limits of different things that are having an adverse impact on the environment, but we don't get any sense from the reports around that bigger picture, and I just wondered if that is something that...
Yes, so the CWMS overarching targets and goals reporting happens every 2 years. So the next big update or progress update will be later this year. So that should give you, I guess, a better sense of how we're tracking against the targets and goals.
Is there nothing that happens between 2 years that we can monitor?
I guess like it's maybe something to consider as part of the reporting to council going forward. That the I guess the reports themselves be more targeted towards that instead of.
Okay, I'll ask it in our
Thank you,
three
Yannick.
waters.
Righto. Now, Pauline's got a question of Les.
Yes, thanks, Les. Kia ora. Are you not doing an update on the Te Wahora?
Yes, I suppose after Jamie, I was just going to speak on the fact that we are a very young and new committee. I've been there for 9 years, and the next person been on there is a councillor from Environment Canterbury who's been there for 4 years. Everybody else has only been there for 2 years or less. So we are a new zone committee that's just getting ourselves together around the table. That's why we won't have a comprehensive report as Annabelle has, for the simple fact with the COVID, we hadn't had a chance to sit down at the table and put in goals. And the last time we just went through our goals and working format on last Monday just gone. And that's setting them for the next 2 years. Prior to that was 2021, that we had actually had a meeting to sit down at the table and set goals and targets.
No, that's fine. So my question, if I may, is just a really easy one. Does your committee have any engagement with the Central Plains Water Trust? Or are you intending to?
Yes, we do. We are coming up with a presentation from. Unfortunately, I can't speak on at this table on the Central Plains Water. I am a trustee of the Central Plains Water.
Right.
So,
but
yeah,
I would
I just
assume,
put it this way. Yes, we are going to have a presentation.
I would assume you'd have an engagement and a relationship with them anyway. Thank you. That's cool. Cheers.
Okay, now Pauline's happy to move this, and I'm more than happy to second it. Have we got any debate? Yes, Yanni.
Yeah, I want to thank the zone committees for the work that they do. It is really important work, but I do think we need to think as a council how we do get better information around what's being done around the Canterbury water management strategy. If you look at freshwater species and their habitat, the goal in 2020, an upward trend in diversity and abundance in native fish populations, it's listed as not being met. We have not identified key Canterbury species to monitor, nor do we conduct regular fish monitoring to enable us to show if we are meeting the goal. And, for those of us who live and represent areas around the river, it's really distressing when we see impacts of industrialisation and activity on our native ecology and our biodiversity. And it's deeply concerning that we don't seem to have any sense of, through our water management strategy targets, what's being done. Now, I know there's a lot of good work being done. I know there's a lot of different monitoring going on with different agencies. Council's got staff, hopefully ECAN's got staff, but there's also a number of other management's measures, environmental limits, for example, which if you go through 2020 goal to review environmental flows and catchment load limits, and look at that if requested by regional and zone committees, target not met. So I just think we need to kind of think about how we can make sure that we do get good understanding of why we're not meeting those targets and what's being done to remediate. And I guess in conclusion, though, I do want to really acknowledge the strong focus on erosion and sediment control that the zone committees are bringing in front of us, although it is disappointing that this has been going on for at least a decade. We've been reading the same information, the same reports, and the problem has been getting worse, not better, and it's glaringly obvious to anyone that goes past the rivers after a heavy rain. You can just see the rivers turn brown. So I'd encourage council to think seriously about what we can do to get better information around the targets that are set at the Canterbury-wide level, and to strongly support the efforts around the erosion and sediment control, because for far too long we've allowed this to continue with a lack of improvement, and in fact a situation that's getting worse. And but I want to acknowledge, I know that there's people that are doing good work trying to address these issues, and maybe it's just a question of resourcing and a question of thinking about how we do things differently to make a better difference, because I am deeply concerned that the Canterbury Water Management Strategy targets are just sitting up here, and we're not really seeing good progress around even measuring whether they're being met or not.
Pauline.
Thanks, Yanni. Look, I also reiterate the thanks to the zone committees, and I have been a member of the Christchurch East Melton, and I do know the amount of work that goes on, and particularly within those zone committees you have the working groups, which is what does a bit of the legwork as well, and have established really close working relationships with volunteer groups. And so it's taken us a long time to reach this level of toxic pollution in our waterways. It's not going to be fixed overnight. And I think that the Zone Committee, together with our council, our Community Waterways Partnership, and our Healthy Waterways Action Plan, bringing all these things together, working together on these things, we've got a much better chance of making really good progress. A lot of the problems do sit at national level. I mean, the copper-free brake pads is just it's head-banging. I mean, we took that as a remit to local government years ago, and the Minister agrees, but it just takes legislation to stop bringing in these brake pads that have copper in them, because the alternative brake pads apparently are equally as good and a similar cost, so it belies logic why that hasn't been picked up. However, thank you for coming in. I think the fact that you come in and talk to us is really, really super helpful, and it's helpful for all of us, for you and for us, because the key to this is to work together and to work with our communities. So we've got to keep an eye on the Community Waterways Partnership. We've got to keep an eye on that we're funding these projects suitably so that we can see results. So we all want to see results. So thank you.
Tim and then Mark.
Yeah, look, thank you. And I think Annabelle hit it on the head really earlier on. When we really do have to nail it at the source. We spent hundreds of millions of dollars, which I think is money really well spent on the retention basins, because they can be used for so many other things, recreation, etc. But I do think we've got to get stronger with regards to working with those at the source, and I really admire the stormwater champions, and I think that could be a really good step in following on from what Aaron said about really getting it visualised and really in people's faces with the Champion Awards. I think it's a really good way forward. So I look forward to working with you guys on that, if you'd like. But we passed an item the other day which I voted against because I felt that it wasn't strong enough. We do have to get on to that. The key is working with those at the source to solve the problem, and I think that's a really good way forward, and I think that's what we should be focused on moving forward. But as Pauline said, the copper brake pads, it's insane. Literally, the governments and different governments have all said this about we've got to nail the environment. California has nailed it. You cannot get a copper brake pad in California. We're a tiny little country at the bottom of the world, which our population is smaller than any of the main cities in California, and yet a decade we've been talking about this, over a decade actually. It's insane. The government really does need to pull its finger out, and we need to work with them and with each other. So I'm really looking forward to moving forward with the zone committees.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you, team, for coming and presenting your report. It's an interesting sort of facet of council that I hadn't really been too aware of until I got elected to council, and I'm really looking forward to working with the zone committee together with community boards and council and ECAN to try and take this to a new level where we can make some serious inroads and difference in our waterways. And this idea with the copper brake pads, I think we've got to really put some pressure on the government heading into this election to see if we can't get them to commit as a team, both sides, to get this nailed and start making some serious inroads into what we need to do for our environment. Also, I did notice that the Banks Peninsula Committee have a real good focus on planting in their catchments, and I'd really like to see all the zone committees commit to the idea of working with the organisations like Te Ara Kakariki do the green dots and to help build that planting in the catchments so that we can catch that sediment on the hills and around before it gets to the waterways. So keep up your good work and look forward to engaging.
Thank you. With that, I will put the motion that we receive the information. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming in.
Kia ora, Mayor. Kia ora, Tyler.
Okay, so we're up to item 9, Three Waters activities from November until January and February. Brent, would you like to come and tell us what we're up to, please?
I'll just take it that the report is read. Quite happy to answer any questions resulting from it. Just in summary, though, for this period running up to February, looking at some of the extraordinary things that Three Waters have had to do and I guess react to over that period of time, including new water regulations coming into effect in November. Still continuing to recover from the treatment plant fire, which we've now got those aerators up and running. Continuing to have staff providing input into the reforms, and then the usual ones of cost escalations. We have our ongoing leaking pipes, which we are reacting to every day, and our backflow water meter and excess water charges. So it sort of puts a bit of a context around the issues that Three Waters has been dealing with over the last 4 months or so. So happy to take any questions. And
Aaron?
Thanks, Brent. Hey, given that we're in the public domain here, when the announcement was made last week that the Three Water changes would now be affordable, what do you take that to mean?
That's
I think you might have to ask the Minister that.
So it wasn't obvious to you.
Got any other questions here?
Yes, I do. On the water leaks, because it is a bit of a bane of some people's existence across the city, are the number of repairs outnumbering the number of reports yet? And have they been for a while?
Are the number of repairs
Outnumbering the number of reported
catching
leaks. So there's a catch-up, as in the two are going to meet at some point.
Yep.
Any time when, like, is there an approximate date, like a month of a particular year, where we think that we'll be caught up and then just deal with what comes up on a day-by-day basis?
I think we're pretty close now. The last I heard, we had about 160 outstanding, and of those I think it was about 90 that just needed reinstatement.
Oh, that's brilliant.
So it is coming down.
But
Wow.
bear in mind, you get these, with the deterioration of pipes, you do these water leaks, you get fresh ones every day. So
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
you just don't know where they come next.
Yeah, there are definitely ups and downs. And one of the other things that we're about to start is our annual leak detection program. So that will generate more work. So depending on the volume of jobs coming through there, we'll just need to manage that carefully.
Right, that'll be preemptive work though, won't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tyler, then Mark, then Sam.
Aaron asked my question, so we're
Okay,
good.
Good. Sam?
Yeah, thanks, Brent. Just around Te Mara Atawai in terms of the chlorine exemptions, can you just talk through, I mean, I know they've said they'll sort of look at 55, 65 days for considering them. What are the, because I guess anecdotally out in the, sort of talking to other councillors around the country, there's sort of a concern that they're potentially not on top of everything as yet. How are we finding them to deal with, and are we comfortable that they'll actually turn stuff around in the timelines they've outlined?
Well, they've had it a while. Tim's been in touch with them, but bear in mind they've had their hands full with what's happened up through Gisborne, but we've heard nothing yet.
No, we haven't had, we're expecting in the next wee while there'll be a response. In general terms, operationally, they've been good to deal with. So from any incidents they've been on top of, we've been providing regular quarterly updates to them. So I've got no issues operationally.
Okay. So it's just that clarity around the exemptions and what that will be, and we think we might get a steer in the next wee while. Is that what
We're hoping so, because it's it will have a big impact on us.
Yeah. So I guess at what point, and maybe it's a question for you, Dawn, is at what point do we, and I don't mean stop waiting, I don't mean that in that way, but what I'm saying is at what point do you get involved as chief exec to their new chief executive and look at that?
Obviously, Councillor, I'm guided by my technical staff. Because we're anticipating it imminently, I think it would be fair to say if we got into May and we still haven't heard anything, then I would be picking the phone up.
Yep.
Okay, Mark?
Thank you. Thanks for the update. Sort of following on from Councillor McDonald's question there around Te Mata Arawai and the outstanding application for exemption that we've got for Brooklands and Kaienga at this stage. Do we have any time frame as to when we might expect that? And then I guess as a follow-up on that, are we working on preparing other catchments to then follow on behind quickly as further exemption applications?
Yeah, so I think we've just answered that.
We answered the
question.
first one,
so,
yeah.
You know, if it's not here by May, then I think the city's going to chase that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yes, we have other exemptions drafted. We're largely waiting for the results of that application just to see how they're assessing it, and then to tailor any future applications once we've got that.
Very good, yeah, because it's, I guess, for each councillor around this table, it's a burning issue that we keep getting asked as to when's the chlorine getting out of our water. So
yeah.
I know
It's a
Dawn will
burning
be able to-
issue across the place.
Yeah.
You know, to be fair to Te Mata Arawai, they will have a large number of requests for exemptions,
Yeah.
and then obviously what's happened in North Island. So we're trying to be reasonable, but my colleagues are absolutely right. There's little point in us submitting any more until we understand the outcome of the two that are in, because we may need to adjust the work and what we've done before we submit any more. Otherwise, I'm asking them to do redundant work, which isn't fair.
Very good. And I guess another question around the leaks. At what sort of point do we trip a mains replacement as opposed to just keep patching repeated links down that same main water line?
It's yeah, that's an interesting one, because we do get reports of repeated leaks, but they're not necessarily at the same point every time. They could be on a valve and then on a pipe. Just gives the impression of being in the same area. And the team do assess the number of repairs in a particular area and then feed that back into the system for renewals.
Yep. Very good, because I notice around my area there's one particular water line that seems to have a good half dozen patches. It looks like each joint in the pipe all the way down. So
yes. And have a look at that if you want to send the details through.
Thank you, Mark.
Very good, thank you.
Sarah?
Thanks. A couple of things. I noticed we've had some of those notifications made to Te Mata Arawai for some non-compliances. What was the response? So with the Pigeon Bay Devotional, Rafferty and West Christchurch, the ones we had to notify between October to December, it says that we notified them, but doesn't say what the response from Te Mata Arawai was.
I can't speak specifically to those ones, but in general terms, they quite often just accept the notification and know that we're doing things to resolve it, depending on what that specific non-compliance was, whether it was a technical non-compliance or something that actually, caused the water to be unsafe.
Okay, thanks. And the other one is on, we've got a large program of work happening across the three waters, and as a council, sometimes we are, constrained by deliverability, those kind of things. Are we taking every opportunity to deliver as much as we can, as quickly as we can, and not just sticking to what's budgeted? If something's able to be brought forward or if it's progressing more quickly, we're doing that work, or are we just sticking to...
The answer to that is yes. We, in fact, we were just having another conversation around that this morning. From time to time, projects do get held up, so we look more globally across the Three Waters program to see if there's something else ready to go. We've made a few changes in terms of, for example, those lateral repairs, being able to cluster them up and delivering them in a different way, and looking at design build options as well. So there's a number of things we're doing to push the program forward.
Yeah, and is there anything that we could do to deliver the program more quickly? Being that, over time things have been degrading, we want to make progress to upgrade, you know, the overall average level of the networks?
I think the things that we've done and are continuing to do, we'll start to see the effect of those. It's a gradual thing because you're building up capability at the same time in the resources that we use. So we're already seeing that, for example, in the laterals program, we're right up to the mark on that. There's a few other projects that we're going, well, we may be able to hold that. It's not quite ready planning wise, so we'll switch some money across. So things are starting to increase in terms of deliverability.
And is there anything that we could do as councillors, any, you know, that would help enable that work to happen more quickly? So any processes and stuff, or?
Yeah, I think the time to look at that is when we prioritise and debate that with the LTP coming up, because that's the time when you may want to shift the focus from one area to another, and that will accelerate the works that way.
Yeah, but shifting focus from one area to another isn't delivering all of it more quickly?
It's around prioritisation.
Yeah.
That's really where our resources can focus.
Okay, but you're not being held up by budget. You're delivering as much as you could possibly deliver, not just delivering to budget.
This, looking at the figures this year, we're tracking pretty well to deliver everything on budget. This year's there's been in some areas some hold-ups in terms of working out a few things around consenting and bits and pieces like that, but we're getting through those now. So no, I don't have any problems there.
And I'm sure Councillor Timpson is very aware we have within our capital programme reporting that goes to F&P. Actually, we did put significantly more resources into Three Waters because of the request. That has uplifted the funds, so we are spending more than we were in previous years. And that we're actually seeing an improvement on the delivery as well.
Okay, Melanie?
I've got a few different ones. Just following from Mark's question about repairs versus replacement, because I have had it was only two different people, but one has talked about a number of repairs being in exactly the same location, and I understand that they may be different things that appear to be the same, but once it's getting past half a dozen plus more, it's sometimes well, in that particular case anyway, I feel like maybe the replacement should have happened a little bit quicker. I know it's going to be replaced now, so it's is there a process to sort of speed that up? Because I know City Care report back and say we think this should be replaced, but yeah, so is there a way to sort of make that happen more quickly sometimes?
Yeah, we are talking with City Care at the moment around just what you're talking about and whether or not, rather than doing repairs, they can look to replace. So we're just trying to work through a criteria for them that gives them the authority to just go ahead and do that replacement.
Right.
The larger mains are a little bit more difficult, but the shorter bits of pipe and the sub-mains that we know are of a certain age, those are something that we can certainly look at replacing.
Yeah, no, that's good. And then on the table on page 6 of the report, or 46 of the agenda, there's a few different things about potential areas of non-compliance with the drinking water standards, and I just wanted to understand about those, because the top one's about water treatment plants and talking about having UV treatment systems where maybe the wellheads are below ground. So is that a sort of temporary solution? Because I thought we were moving all wellheads above ground.
I'd have to look into the detail of that in these. I'm wondering if there's this is something we can come back to you on, because it gets quite complex.
Okay.
Some of the reasons for these non-compliances.
Right, and my other questions were about sort of below that and the exemptions for various things about online monitoring and contact time.
Yeah, so a number of those things are new requirements. So we've never had to do those before. So when the rules came out and the date was set that we needed to be compliant by, there was no way that we could be compliant because we haven't done the installation of.
So it's a temporary exemption until such time.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and I think Te Mara ROI are conscious of that, and they're conscious of the Christchurch supply being complex, and it's going to take time to get all this stuff installed.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Cool. Thanks.
Can I suggest, please, Tim, that we do a proper briefing note, because you're right of the complexities of the changes, and give some live examples about what it was like, what the requirements were before and what the differences are, because I think that would help.
Okay. Pauline.
Yep, look, just following on from Mel, I was going to ask about the non-compliance as well. And in your, if you can explain on the page 46, estimated duration of non-compliance 5 years after approved in the LTP. Is that the last LTP or the next one coming up?
Yeah, okay, so that's something that I think we should probably pick up at the briefing, because it's all to do around source water and being having bacterial compliance versus protozoa compliance, and how we can achieve that. UV is one of those things, class 1 water is another one of those things, which is effectively proving that our source water is a really high standard. That's going to take us, on a particular well, it could take us 12 months to achieve.
Yeah, so if this is responding to the standards which came into effect in November, then I would say this is for the next LTP, I'd guess. So it's looking like we're going to require considerable budget to achieve these standards. And it sounds to me like it's how long is a piece of string? How long is it are we going to be allowed to be non-compliant for? That's the question, isn't it? And I'm also just want to point out that even if an entity was in place now, they wouldn't be able to do this any quicker anyway, would they? It's and I think that was my main question. It does say in here too that we're 1.2 million over budget in our OPEX as well. So that's a considerable overrun, isn't it?
And it's also a reflection on some of the things I mentioned at the start. And when we get things like burst mains or non-compliances, or it's stuff. It's not like we can't do it. We have to do it, whether it's in budget or not. It's public health you're talking about here. So it's just an indication of the volume of work and the type of work that Three Waters have to do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. My turn. Mm-hmm. Are all the aerators in the ponds going now? Is that right?
Yes.
So the other day I got a ring from a resident, not who you would think it is, but someone else, saying to me that the smell was particularly bad. Would that be because the aerators have just been livened up and there's a bit of a dozy part of the pond that might have been getting a bit more livened up than what it should have been? Would that be fair to say or not?
So we did put an article out the other day. There was concern when we turned them on that it may stir the sludge up from the bottom, but we were pleasantly surprised because we have monitoring right around all those ponds now, and we're pleasantly surprised at the minimal effect it did have. So the odours that you might have been wrong about may have been coming from something else, I don't know. But as of last night, reading all the oxygen levels in the ponds and what have you, they've now turned all the indicator lights back to green for all ponds, whereas some of them were sitting at orange. It's had a much better effect than what we'd even hoped for.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Tyler? Yeah, I've got you, Jan.
Kia ora. I'm talking about renewals here and the relationship that you have with transport around streamlining the work so you don't have to go there once. Can you talk to us a bit more about that? It's just for public knowledge.
Well, as much as possible, we do try and align our programs, but on top of that, we have some reactive funding in the Three Waters budget to, if they're part way through a street repair, that we can react to that and sort those issues out as well. So there's quite a bit of effort goes into aligning and getting things in the right order. Doesn't always come off, as we know, but it's one of our priorities when we're going through the LTP prioritisation.
Sure.
Just to make sure that the interdependencies and the alignment.
So some jobs may be pushed forward or pushed back depending on whichever department can or cannot deliver.
If we can do them, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to take this offline too, around Wharenui Road and maybe getting an update with that, if that's
okay.
right.
We can do that.
No worries. Cheers.
Thank you. Tyrone?
Got it. So just looking through the table of potential non-compliances, like after Christchurch, it's like a roll call of Banks Peninsula communities. So I guess what I want to know is, like, if any one of those things were to be realised, any of those potential non-compliances were to be realised, are we in for a budget blowout on any kind of, given, like, in terms of like what we're currently planning for? Are we in for some surprises a la O'Kane's Bay?
I have to take that one away, I think, and we
Okay.
have to go through and have a look at it.
Right, but there's risk. I mean, you don't need to put a number on
risk.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is.
So basically, we've got a pipeline of things that we're planning for. Any one of these probably likely would add to the size of that
It would, and
pipeline.
it also depends on the direction that we take
Yeah.
to address a particular issue. So something like online monitoring, we've already got projects in play for that. If it's UV sterilisation or anything else, there's many factors that we need to consider.
Okay, cool. Just another one, Phil, if that's okay. Different topic slightly. So there's a lot of logging activity around the peninsula at the moment that's damaging roads and water mains and all that sort of stuff. Do we have any record? Like, it seems to be quite intense at the moment, maybe more than another years. I mean, that's just my perception. I don't know how true that is. But is there any recourse that we have there? Like, it seems to be really putting a lot of strain on our resources to fix a lot of those burst mains affected by, like, really, heavy trucking. Is that something you've noticed, or?
I think a high level answer, a simple answer to that is if we know where the damage has come from, yes, we would be following it up. But at the same time, if it's water supply, for example, we have to get in straight away and do something about it. But it's like any damage on any other council asset through the city. If we know about it and we're sure of the cause and we have proof, then we can chase it.
Because I know that I think it was in New Plymouth that they brought in like a targeted rate to logging companies, didn't they? It wasn't very popular, but it was. Is that something that we'd ever think about doing?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
All right. Cheers.
Okay. Yanni, then Kelly.
Cool. Thank you. So just best case scenario, when we can take chlorine out of the places where we're currently putting it in, are we looking at 3 to 5 years? Or I was just confused reading the report because there's all these new requirements that are going to take years and years. So things like age of the water, source water, which, I mean, for the past 5 years we've heard that we're testing and we needed to wait another year, and it takes a long time, and then the standards have changed, so now apparently the work we were doing before is no longer good enough. We now need to do another 3 years of continuous monitoring. Can you give us just a sense, because what I didn't get from the report is, I appreciate there's things that we've asked for an exemption on, and we won't meet those obviously within certain timeframes, but there's other things that seem that we have to do before we could even be considered for an exemption, and I didn't quite understand the difference between the two requirements.
There's a couple of things there, and it really does hinge on this exemption application for Brooklands Kaienga. Once we get the response back to that, it will give the city a fairly good steer as to where the regulator is or what they're thinking. In terms of that source water you talked about, do you want to outline the time frame there as to what it would take to get Class 1 water, for example, the monitoring required?
Yeah, and we can cover all of that.
Do that in this briefing.
In that briefing as well, if you like.
Yeah. Thank you, mate.
I think as the Deputy Mayor was saying, it's
lastly.
So I just had a...
Sorry.
No, I've got a few more questions. So I was just increasingly concerned to read through the report that the maintenance in regards to city care was, there was extra money being required, there was performance issues in terms of the contract, there was data that seemed to be missing. So, page 48, city care contract costs are driving overspend against budget. There's other references throughout the report around not having the data available to measure. So page 61, since the new contract started on 1st of September 2022, significant number of changes in how we manage data between ourselves and contractor CityCare. We're currently working through the final validation, which means we'll be able to monitor, and then it goes on to say, unfortunately, this work has been delayed and full response time performance reporting now be available next 3 waters.
And the question is coming soon?
Well, no, the question is in regards to just a high-level understanding of what's happening with CityCare around the budget blowouts and the budget overspend and the data that we're getting from the contractor. Can you give us a sort of a sense of, is it they're not performing as a contractor? Is it IT issues?
Let him answer the question, mate.
Yeah.
Yeah, so regarding budget, it's not that CityCare's blown the budget, it's that reactive repairs have contributed towards that. The data question is around previously CityCare would provide information to us and report. We wanted to shift that, and so it was actually council providing that information to our own team. So that's in the final stages of being finalised. Meeting today on that, actually.
So can you just tell me on page 25?
No, we've got to get moving on there, Yanni.
So can I just get a question, just a final question? Can I just get a new maintenance contract at CityCare commenced 1st of September. It's underway. A number of issues continue to be ironed out to make sure the aims of the contract are met. But then it says some of the maintenance works are well behind schedule, particularly tributary waterways and stormwater basins. A remedial plan to catch up on the work is now in place. Can we get a copy of that remedial plan? And can you give us a sense of when you think we'll get back to getting on schedule?
Yeah, happy to. And bearing in mind that this report is reasonably old now, so the up-to-date numbers will be coming through from a water leaks perspective.
Thank you, Tim. Great answer, Kelly.
Yeah, thanks, guys. First, I just want to say thanks for sending some of your staff along to the Tenby Place Newport Street meeting and answering questions for the residents. For obviously something that's been going on for a long time, and appreciate the advice you gave and the attention you put on that. Just in terms of stormwater, I see there's an item here for Marston's Road Canal Reserve Drain, and there'd been issues with timber supply. So what I wanted to know is, you're spending, looks like 8.3 million on this. Is it going to be enclosed, or are you just renewing the timber in the drain and leaving it as it was? Do you have the details?
I don't know the details of it, and I'm presuming it'll be from the bit running north from QE2 Drive, potentially.
No, it's on Marston's Road, sort of heading from QE2 Drive, north, to Preston's Road, I think it is.
So a bit of history on that is the piece heading south from there we piped a number of years ago.
Right.
Because it was right beside residential sections and it was full of rubbish, all that sort of stuff. So that made a lot of sense. However, the downside of piping is you lose the ability of subsoil drainage. So a timber drain is not only a conduit, but it also allows the water to come out of the soils and get taken away. So the type of price you're looking at there is because not only would we have to price it, to pipe it, but we'd have to put in subsoil drainage as well, and a number of other things. Potentially it's also linked to safety on the road and that type of thing, because it's quite close there.
Yeah, it is.
I don't know the specifics of the project, but historically that's what we used to do.
Yeah, I just thought that, they are quite sort of, I don't know, they look dangerous, because they're sort of...
They're actually extremely efficient in terms of Christchurch, because our forefathers decided to plonk us in the middle of a swamp.
Yeah, and I imagine in Marston's that would be, really useful to have those.
And they're very cost effective in terms of you renew some timbers after I think about 30 odd years or something like that, replace broken struts on the top, whereas pipes are very, very expensive.
Okay, good to know. Thanks.
Thank you. So, thank you for all the questions. I'll now ask for someone to move that, and that is Kelly, and seconded by Mark. So, any debate? Tara?
I just really want to quickly say, accepting the report, there's a lot of stuff that goes on, amazing stuff that goes on under the surface here that the report doesn't talk about, and I'll And I really want to give a shout out to Tim and his team for the work that they've done around Birdlings Flat. It's just been exemplary in the way that the community engagement, the communication, just the really strong work there, and actually that the team does all around the peninsula. So I just wanted to just acknowledge that, and
thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.
Mark?
Yeah, just like to again say thank you to the team. You guys do a huge amount of work in our city, in the Three Waters, and I think as a council and as ratepayers, we'd like to say a huge thank you.
Righto, and with that, I will put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Thank you, carried. Good. So now we move on to item number 10, removal of library fines 1 year on. Carolyn, welcome back.
Thank you. A change of focus. For sure.
Yep.
Kia ora, Mayor and councillors. I'd just like to introduce Elaine Sides. For those of you who don't know
Hello, Elaine.
she is the manager of content. That's all things collections for libraries, digital and print, and everything in between. And also our fees and charges. She keeps a very close eye on issues to do with charges and fees. So she is the author of this report. I'm taking it as read that councillors have read our brief information report, progress report 1 year on, from, as you will know, from the removal of fines, which was the 1st of March 2022. So this is really just an overview of the impact and changes and reactions from the public and from customers, which has been very positive. But I think probably the best thing, maybe just if you have questions for us, questions or comments, we will do our best to answer.
Yep, Yanni.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the report. It is really interesting. I was just, and this was a concern raised at the time that we looked at the overdue fines, is I was also really concerned about the high cost of replacement books, including the fees and the cost of the books. Is there any work being done in regards to that as a barrier for people?
Well, interesting, in the last year, the amount of comments that we've had back from our customers is often around the processing fee that we charge. So if someone loses a book, we charge them the replacement cost that we have, to replace it. Our costs for books, we've got really good pricing through our suppliers, so that's kind of there. But then we add a $21 fee, which is a kind of an administration fee, which covers the staff cost to be able to look and reorder the book, as well as finally getting the book and processing, putting laminate or whatever we need to do on it. So for some customers, particularly when they say have got a lost magazine, which is kind of cost $10, they then have to pay $21 to be able to for the whole charge. So that is a barrier for some people. That fee is the $21 fee is a fee that comes through the fees and charges as part of the LTP annual plan process.
So is it based on a 100% cost recovery, or is there, what would be the kind of, have you got a sense of how long it would take to do that work, or what the actual cost is?
We did a time and motion study for the amount of time it took to look up to see whether the book was still in print, as well as to actually place an order with our supplier, as well as then getting the book to receive it and pay through an invoicing process. So
okay, thank you.
It's something council. Sorry, it's something council could look at, though. I mean, if we wish to reduce that fee, but it's an average cost, really.
This is in relation to year on, in terms of the library fines and the impacts.
Year on year. Okay, Tyrone.
Yes.
No, Tyler. Sorry.
Cheers, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question for the public, because a lot of them don't look at agendas. In a nutshell, can you please explain how you think it went based on this report?
Yes, sure. I think it's so 1 year in. So noting that it is just 1 year in, the reaction, the biggest positive thing I think to say right up front is that the reaction from the public, from our users and members, has been really, really, really positive. So while it's very hard to get the hard data, we've given you some information about increase in issues, increase in membership, increase in the number of holds, because that's the other thing that happened, was a reduction in holds charges and a removal of holds charges for customers in Akaroa and Little River. So we've got those indicators in terms of the numbers, but we've also had an awful lot of anecdotal comments to say how much people really value this, just how much it's taken that stress away from their borrowing, and the number of disputes that we handle, that staff dealing with customer disputes has diminished dramatically, which is a real positive, I think, for the public and of course for our staff.
That's phenomenal. Thank you so much.
Tim?
Yeah, thank you. A couple of the comments I've had is that the wait time now for books on that they've ordered are on hold because people just hold on to them for longer because they're not worried about the fine. Obviously, there's no fine. What are your comments with regards to that?
So we've been monitoring our holds list that we have on items, and we've continued to do that through the last 12 months, and at times we have bought extra copies, and those copies of those very popular books have gone out, but we don't believe that the waiting time has increased to what it was beforehand.
Okay. Aaron?
Yeah, so just looking at the graph, and it could just be just a numbers thing because it doesn't go back much beyond the year, but it ramps up the percentage of overdue and the number of overdue items, pretty much both double. But is that purely just a volume thing and it doesn't really matter? No one's actually missing out on getting books. It's just because people can, they just take longer, but they are still coming back. Is that all that means?
Yeah.
Yes, that's what we believe it means, and the fluctuations relate to the fact that it's always changing because of the issue. The volume of issues go up and down all the time, and that has the flow-on effect through to the items out, the items overdue. I think we make the point, and Elaine makes the point in here, that people are the trend is at the moment that people are holding on to their books for a bit longer, but then once they hit that 28-day point, that's a hard line, then they are coming back, and they're coming back in greater volume, at least so far.
So you wouldn't want to increase that because that'll just push that number out.
Yeah, it used to be, and we could do a very long, and I'm sure it'd be far too much information for you, but it used to be a longer period, and we found, yes, that we had a bigger problem with outstanding items, and therefore debt levels, etc. It became more bothersome for them, so we've tried to tighten that time frame. We have tightened that time frame considerably. There's always a sort of balance there.
It's just a straight out human behaviour thing. If it wasn't for the last day, nothing would get done.
Yes, yes.
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you, Aaron, Caroline. I imagine that Sarah would like to move this. Yes. And
before you do a seconder,
yes,
Mayor,
yes.
could I just do a plug for the electronic version, which is Libby, which is absolutely amazing. So if you haven't got the app, get it, and it means you don't have the waiting.
Thank you, Dawn. And it can't be overdue.
And it can't be overdue.
And you don't have to pay hold fines either.
It's fantastic. It's the best thing ever.
Yes.
And Tyler's happy to second it. Debate. Okie dokie.
Just a couple of brief comments. The only thing you absolutely have to know, said Albert Einstein, is the location of the library. And for too long we excluded people who couldn't afford to pay fines, people who were maybe slow readers and needed longer to read their books, those kind of things, from being able to access the resources that they paid rates to actually purchase in the first place. And so I'm really, really pleased to see that this has gone through and that the feedback is overwhelmingly supportive, which is great. There have been some other inequities, which is one of the reasons we put it through. So apps like Libby, you actually need a decent device to be able to do that and to read the electronic stuff. And for people who could afford those devices, they never even had to face hold fees or fines. But for people who couldn't afford them and could only do the paper copies, they did face those. And so really pleased that we've done this. And as we know, libraries will get you through times of no money much better than money will get you through times of no libraries. Thank you.
Andre.
I'd actually like to make a confession and say I have been dismal at returning my library books on time, and the fees ended up costing me a small fortune, to be honest. And I actually stopped borrowing books as a result, knowing that I probably won't get around to returning this on time. It's just going to end up costing me. So that did end up affecting my wealth of knowledge. This would encourage me to start using books again, and also getting them there on time as well.
Okay, thank you very much. So with that, I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Good on you. Right, move on to item 12, the Mayor's monthly report. Has everyone, as I say every month, everyone will have read it. It's actually 2 pages this month, you'll notice, and pictures. So, and Kelly's happy to move it, and Sam's happy to second it, and there'll be no debate because I'm not going to have any. Yeah, far away. You want to say something? Yeah, that's right. Yeah, far away, mate.
Kia ora everyone. It's just for, again, public knowledge that I am stepping down to continue as the Taumotu Runanga representative, not stepping down from the Water Zone Committee. So just wanting to clarify that. Kia ora.
Yep, thank you very much. So I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Against? Thank you, carried. Right, we now will go into public excluded. And resolve to exclude the public as set out on pages 8 and 9 of the open supplementary agenda. So I've got a mover for that, who is Sam, and Tim's the seconder. So all those in favour? Aye, against, thanks, carried. Right.